All right, y'all. Appreciate you checking in, whether you're watching this, listening to this. I got Coach Jordan Hunter from North Arkansas College, Northark. You guys are tuning in to Center Court, as I'm dubbing this, episode 3 with Coach Dakota Webb. Coach, let's assume like the player, the parent, the coach, whoever's watching or listening to this has no clue who you are. How would you describe yourself?
Well, thanks for having me first and foremost.
Of course.
And most people have no clue who I am. Most people might know who my father is, Steve Hunter. He's a Hall of Fame high school basketball coach from this area. And,
right.
I'm a junior college basketball coach. Assistant athletic director, assistant men's basketball coach at North Arkansas College, and I teach business and IT classes as well. But who I am as a person, former high school and college basketball player that went into the business world and decided that I miss being around basketball way too much and came back to coaching.
Awesome. What made you fall in love with basketball? Was it like being around your dad, who was, so deep in it as like such a renowned coach, or like did you love it from the beginning, or were you one of those kids that kind of had to fall in love with it over time? Or
yeah, I mean, it's just a rite of passage in my family, and we're a sports family. I feel like I've always loved it. There's definitely ups and downs with sports, where you fall more in love or less in love with it over time, but I guess the feeling that it gives you, just being a part of a team and competing, is tough to replicate in other areas of your life.
Right. So that's probably what you miss the most about it, you think?
Definitely. Just that adrenaline rush that comes with game day, and really just the grind of being disciplined day in and day out with with your body and developing your skills. That's, of course, it's something you really miss, and you don't know you miss until you're away from it.
Right. So where was it that you played at? High school, college?
High school, I played at Ozark High School here in the Springfield area, and was a part of some really good teams my sophomore, junior, and senior year there.
Right.
Played at North Central Missouri College, which is up in Trenton. It's a junior college, and we actually compete against them now.
Nice.
Which is fun. One of my college roommates and one of my good friends in the coaching world is the head coach there, so it's fun to coach against him. We were teammates my freshman year there at North Central, and then I transferred to Westminster College, which is an NCAA Division III in Fulton, Missouri.
Right?
Yep. That was my playing career.
That's awesome. I had some friends that played at Westminster in my short stint up at Central Methodist University. So having come up in like a sports family, or like your dad being such a good coach, how is it now? Like, you've seen that from like the family side, you've seen it as a player. How is it now? Like, you assist your dad, right? It's been like 6 years now that you've been assisting.
Yeah, this is the start of our 6th year, so I guess it's been about 5.5 years since I moved down here and started helping my dad, and always being in his shadow. He's had a lot of success, and I always knew that he was a good coach and a quality coach. But seeing it from the inside, behind closed doors, and those conversations that happen, that's it's been eye-opening, and I've learned so much that I thought that maybe I knew, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Right. What have you learned the most from your dad?
Just that it's important to have standards, and it's important to have morals and to hold people accountable. But also be understanding. Those relationships that you develop with your players, that's really the most important part about what we do. That's really what we remember the most about players after they leave is the relationship that we had with them. The wins and the losses are important, and that's kind of what you're shooting for. But the relationship development is kind of what makes it the most rewarding profession.
And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Right, like I remember. I had such a poor experience, largely to my fault, as a college player, that I told myself I was done with it and like walked away, and I couldn't stay, much like you said, like you couldn't stay away from it, like you missed it. And for me, like I had like a personal journey I had to overcome that it took years. It wasn't even like at the beginning of my coaching career, but just kind of like coming to grips with what I needed to do better and whatnot. And that kind of got the sour taste out of my mouth as well. Like whenever you realize it's your fault, nobody like is putting this on you, and you just take ownership. But, it's funny. I still remember whenever I decided to get back into it, and the first person I called was my high school coach, and like I was, first of all, wanting advice, and then I just was overcome with wanting to tell him thank you, right? Because I had now been a few years removed from high school, had some perspective, and it was even more so clear to me just like how big he was in my life and how it was so much bigger than basketball, right? And like those relationships, I think even now are what I probably value the most, right? Like there's a ton of people that know basketball, like that can't be overstated. You know what I mean? There's really not that much to know. I mean, there's of course varying levels.
We do overcomplicate it sometimes.
We really do.
Yeah.
It's probably the most undertaught and overcomplicated thing there is in the sports world, or maybe it's just my little microcosm because I'm not very involved close to in every other sport. But it does feel that way sometimes. But honestly, like if you don't truly get the joy out of those relationships, it just what are we getting up for? A job that, holy cow, I work 15-ish hours a day. Yeah. I don't want to break up my salary and really think about how much I'm getting
Let's not do that. Let's not think about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, if it wasn't about the people, I'm not sure that I would stay in it because, you're not going to get rich doing it. Most people aren't going to get rich doing it.
Absolutely not.
But back to what you were saying, I mean, when you're younger, it's so difficult to blame yourself for your actions. It's hard. As you get older, you kind of realize the people that were trying to help you, that maybe you didn't heed their advice, and you look back and I've had some of those conversations with former coaches as well. I look back and I apologize.
I've had
sorry. I know I wasn't the easiest to deal with.
Lengthy emails that I've sent. I was like, hey, hindsight being 2020, I was an idiot.
Right.
With you being at the junior college level, how is that dynamic? You got guys coming in with varying backgrounds. This is like their shot to prove to a four-year school that they're worthy of a scholarship or they're worthy of playing at this level or that level, and obviously just every team, youth, high school, college, we have players with varying backgrounds, different family lives, different financial lives, like what have you. But is it unique in your opinion at the junior college level? And if so, how would that be unique? Like the relationships?
I think all levels of basketball and specifically college basketball have their own unique challenges. And with the junior college thing, I think we talked about this before. There's some baggage somewhere. Maybe they need some skill development. Maybe they need to get bigger and stronger. Maybe they need to rehabilitate their academics. Which is why a lot of student athletes end up going the junior college route. For me, it was the skill development thing, getting a little bit bigger and stronger. That's kind of where I needed to be. But for a lot of our guys, it's the academic side, or maybe it was an attitude thing in high school. So not a lot of the four-year coaches trusted them with a pretty hefty scholarship amount. But with the junior college thing, it's a revolving door. So I have to cast an extremely wide net when I'm recruiting because I'm looking to bring in 10, maybe 15 guys a year.
Right. You just have,
and that's a lot more than at the four-year level. So just the amount of time spent on recruiting and the amount of players that we have to bring into our program and teach in a hurry, get them up to speed in a hurry, because I might only have them for a year, 2 years at most for most kids. And so, junior college definitely has its own unique challenges, but once again, it's extremely rewarding too whenever you get those kids that do it academically, they do it on the floor, and they get that scholarship to that four-year school. Right. That's what it's all about.
I think like a few things crossed my mind there, and I'm going to ask you about like the recruiting process in a moment, because I think that's one of the things I get asked about a ton with players and parents that I serve in this area. But also hearing you say all that, for whatever reason in my brain, it just triggered like, it's super rewarding. You said that, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but just that process is so arduous already, like having to cast that wide net, having to get all these players that are only going to be there 1 or 2 years, get everybody on the same page, develop them. You have all those obstacles, if you will, or little nuances. And then you could put that all together and have an amazing year, which is, as you said, rewarding. But also to me, like I'm thinking about the fact that even immediately after that reward, you're back at work. You know what I mean? Like,
never stops.
Just the concept of not resting on your laurels and being like, thinking too highly of yourself, like, yeah, we did it. Like, no, I'm back to it the very next day.
Well,
right?
I mean, we're not winning national championships every year. That's obviously the goal, is to compete for a national title every year. But there's some records that we've broken at the school, and we've had quite a bit of success. But we're definitely not where we want the program to be right now. And as far as the recruiting goes. There's great players at all levels of college basketball. I guess I didn't remember, or maybe I didn't realize how talented some of these guys were at our level.
Right.
And the great thing about recruiting for college basketball is, unlike the high school level, I get to recruit players based on the skill sets that fit our program and fit our system.
Right. Yeah.
And so what we're looking for in a player might not be the same thing that other schools are looking for in a player. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of fun, just understanding what our head coach Steve Hunter and myself really like in a player, and going out and trying to find those guys within our recruiting base. It's extremely difficult, but it's also a lot of fun as well.
Right. And you hit the nail on the head. It's almost like recruiting for a corporate job, if you will. You've got all these applicants, a lot of players that want to play college ball, but who fits what you guys want to do at the end of the day.
Right.
What is that like for your program specifically? What are you guys looking for?
We play very fast. We score a lot of points.
Like
some
98 a game last year.
Yeah, last year was around 98. We've averaged over 100 before in a season, and we look for guys that play hard. You wouldn't think that's a skill, but it's becoming a skill. Just somebody that has a high motor, somebody that has the ability to shoot the three. We shoot a lot of threes. That's at all positions, at all five positions. That would be very important to us. And handling the ball and passing. We've led the nation in assists. All 5 years we've been there. We pass the ball. A lot of people think of the junior college level as kind of a selfish level where a lot of guys are just out to get there so that they can get to the next level.
Scholarship.
That's not what we're looking for. We usually have somewhere between 4 and 5 guys that average in double figures. So we share the basketball, and so if you're too selfish. Or if you're too used to playing at a slow pace, those might be two things that would definitely hinder us from recruiting.
Right, and that makes sense to me. I mean, each program's going to have their systems, right? Of course, and like how you guys want to play fast, because there's various different ways you could, right? It's not just like a clock management thing. It's like, how are we getting our shots? What spots on the floor? What have you? Like quick hitters, quick actions, things of that nature. So I'm sure like that plays a little bit into who you're looking at too.
Oh, definitely.
But you said playing hard is a skill anymore, and it truly is. Like I even had a conversation on Twitter earlier today with a coach from Oklahoma, and he was talking about how frustrating, or how he'll never understand like how kids can show up to the gym and like not want to work hard. And my first thought was like, I think as coaches it's up to us to just recognize it. But I'm never going to try to get you to care as much as I care. You know what I mean? And especially you guys, like you get to choose like whether or not this dude gets an offer. Okay, we thought we wanted you.
Right.
However, it looks like you might not be the best fit.
Yeah. I've been wrong before.
Right, of course. And I mean, I think in some ways, like in the business world, like the hire fast, fire fast model makes a lot of sense to me with college basketball as well. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the transfer rate. It may, truthfully, because we, think, hey, this is a great fit for my son or my daughter, or, coaches may think like, hey, this is the spot for you until you're there. Right. And then we kind of uncover the other issues at hand. Right.
No, nobody's exactly who you think they are when you bring them in. And really, you walk that fine line because you don't want kids to feel unsafe. You want them to feel like they made the right choice, and you want to keep them there.
And they've got to grow anyway. Like they're not going to be perfect by any means.
But it is a production-based business. You have to perform, and you have to kind of quote unquote do it our way while you're there. And I know that not everybody has the same goals as they come in. As maybe you would like for them to have. We thought when we got into this that everybody wanted to play for 4 years. Right. Everybody wanted to get a college degree, and that has just simply not been the case. Some guys are really just looking to play another year, or looking to play another year or two.
Like they're just not done playing ball.
They're really not interested in doing the job in the classroom. They're really not interested in putting in the work on the floor to develop their skills. And then there are those that are all in, you know,
Right.
and those are the ones that you know, you wish you had a whole team full of, but you know, look at every JUCO roster. Not every one of them transfers to a 4-year school after a year or two.
No,
That's not the case.
And it's not always skill, right? Like,
No.
I worry sometimes, or you know, think about how many players care so much about what others think about them that is why I'm trying to get a college scholarship. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
For the tweet, you know, hey, so, you know, signing, you know, I can go into my notes app and write a paragraph thanking my coaches and my family and say, hey, I'm, you know, 110% committed to this school.
The committed
right?
tweet.
And I just worry that it, for some, might be, you know, a source of insecurity, or like, you know, hey, look how good I am at this. You know, maybe people will really think something of me because now I have my college scholarship. And I think there's so many players that you see get to the next level and realize they don't really love it as much as they thought they did.
Oh yeah, and it becomes a job too. I mean, it
Of
really
course,
is when you
yeah.
attach dollars and cents to the college basketball thing. You know, it is a job.
Yeah.
That is their
And
job.
you're
while they're
expected
on
to
campus.
produce,
Yeah,
like you
you
said.
have to show up every day, and you have to bring it every day. And
Of course.
And that grind, and it's the longest season. You know, we get all freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
It's the longest season any of them have ever played in.
Of course.
And so that mental grind throughout the year, most of them are not prepared for.
No.
They think they are. And you know, I would never, you know, talk negatively about anybody in the industry, but a lot of these high school coaches, I don't think are getting guys mentally and physically prepared
Right.
for where they need to be to play at our level, and to play at any level of college basketball. You know, we still condition heavily, and some guys never conditioned in high school.
Really?
And so that's
wild.
we thought that
Right.
you know, that wouldn't be the case, but it has
Well,
been
you got
the
to play
case.
fast, so.
Yeah, you have to be in shape to play for us.
Right. What do you think with, like, at the high school level specifically, whether it's somebody like me who's like, I don't coach anymore, I just do player development, or it is a coaching staff, what do you think we should be doing? And I know, I'm well aware there are coaches who are probably doing these things, right? But what do you think the 2-3 important priorities would be for us to get them ready for the next level?
Oh, definitely. And I think we kind of talked about a couple of these
Right.
before we started recording here. But you know, number one, first and foremost, you know, as far as skill development goes, would be the weak hand development. Most guys, you know, right-handed players can't use their left hand, and a lot of left-handed players can actually use their right hand pretty well because
Really?
you know, everyone's pretty right-hand dominant in our culture.
Right.
But yeah, as far as the left hand goes, I think that we definitely need to do a better job of developing that for the next level. Whenever you make that leap, a lot of times it's not necessarily a skill development thing, but it is a size and speed and strength thing.
Okay.
And so a lot of guys don't have the commitment, I think, to their conditioning and their strength that they need to before they get there. And some of that can be helped. Some of it's, you know, it's genetics. They're just not big and strong enough yet.
Right.
But some of those guys, you know, they've never touched a weight before. They didn't take it seriously, and it's catching up to them when they get to the next level. So those would be two of the things that I would say.
And honestly, like that strength and conditioning aspect, I have some colleagues that are far more, you know, professional in that realm than I am, or that's their scope of practice, you know, exercise science majors that currently do that for a living. And I've heard many of them say that at the high school level, like they wish people would get rid of record boards and things of that nature, because it's not just the amount of weight you move, it's being able to move as an athlete. Right. And
Correct.
so I think like sometimes you see players that are injury prone, and maybe you wonder, like, did they do enough specific functional movement training that could have been preventative? You know what I mean? Or, you know, I know Alan Stein, who used to be with Pure Sweat, talks a lot about, you know, things that you could quickly do at the beginning of workouts with your team to try to help flexibility and like that movement training aspect of basketball. But, you know, it's rare to see the player that, like, everybody likes to shoot, you know what I mean? And like purposeful shots is a whole other thing entirely. Like, you know, there's something to be said for quality versus quantity. But, you know, there's less players that are willing, in my experience, to like put that commitment to their body, you know, like
Are you getting enough sleep? Are you worried about your
right.
diet? Are you consistently
are you on TikTok
in the weight
2
room? Yeah.
Like,
are you running at full speed? I mean,
exactly.
those are some things that, you know, we see a lot of injuries early in the year because guys don't come in shape, and then they push their bodies past the limits, and then, you know, we popped a hamstring. You know, I've seen a lot of it early in our season just this year. So
and I think like the lifestyle side of it more than anything, right? Like you can't just flip the switch.
Right.
Like if you're like, and you even mentioned it, like you missed that piece of it, is like whenever you stepped away, is just like as a student athlete, it is a job. It is a full-time job. Like you don't have your, and I don't like shaming people for resting. I think that's part of the job. You know what I mean? So I'm not by any means saying like, you know, the grind season is all day, every day, no days off. Like I think that's asinine. But I think like making sure you're putting in the work that demands rest, you know what I mean, and being smart with that balance.
I like that.
Is just something we don't take enough pride in. You know what I mean? Like we all want to post the videos of us doing this or that or the other in the gym, but it's not sexy or fun to think about like what you're eating in the off season, the amount of sleep you're getting. Like, are you getting out and doing your runs? You know what I mean? And I know a lot of college programs like will send their guys like strength and conditioning like guidelines for the summer, and like the amount of players that do it is
correct. Yeah,
it's not many.
And that's another, you know, you can call it a positive or a negative, I guess, from a coaching standpoint.
Right.
That we have to deal with at the junior college level. We don't keep them over the summer. So even though I do send them a strength and conditioning routine, most of them will not do it, as you said.
Of course.
And
whereas
so
like the
I'm not
Division
able
I athlete
to monitor them.
could be like exactly.
Division I and Division II guys at the NCAA level, most of those coaches are going to see them outside of maybe you know, a month out of the year. They're with them 11 months a year, so they are able to monitor a lot of these things that I'm not able to monitor for our athletes. But you know, the positive side of that might be that they get some time away from me and I get some time away from them.
That's
which
fair.
Is that side is maybe.
I think that is why you see so many. I heard this when I was in Colorado and I was around the University of Colorado staff and kind of picking their brains. And this was a young me, unsure. Did I want to coach high school? Did I want to do the student assistant thing and like be a GA and try to be a college coach? Like what does God have for me, or what am I trying to do? And you know, I remember asking Rodney Billups, Sean Kearney, whenever they were at CU, and Coach Tad Boyle, who was still the head coach there. And it was funny, like just talking to them and kind of hearing from their side of things, like a lot of them really value the JUCO experience. You know, and they're like, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for the student assistant and GA route. Like a lot of good coaches come up from that because you're in it for a while. But the junior college level is such a wild, wild west like alternative with the rule barriers, like you mentioned, where like you don't get all of the resources or time that the D1, D2 guys get. And so if you can succeed, and the revolving door of recruiting, I think recruiting is such a big part of the job once you try to be a D1, D2 coach from what I've been told. You know, doing that at the junior college level kind of proves you can do it.
Maybe the most important part of what I do is recruiting. I mean, we say recruiting, scheduling, X's and O's in that order. Don't get those out of order, because if you don't recruit the right kids for your program, you're not going to have a successful year. Right. And if you schedule the wrong way, then you might have kind of a rough year as well. Right. It's a fine line between too many challenges and not enough, you know. Right.
And it probably depends on
games that you can win
year to year.
Yeah, sure. and then the X's and O's. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Maybe we overthink the game a little bit too much. We'd like to think as coaches that maybe we can out game plan or out skill set some of our opponents, but that very rarely comes into play. A lot of games are won or lost before we even begin.
So. Right, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, you know, at the college level, of course, the recruiting part, but then at every level, the preparation. You know what I mean? The preparation of your guys, like, are we ready to go for our schedule? Not like, hey, at halftime, I'm going to draw up a better set than you do to start the third quarter, or we're going to switch up our defensive scheme and trick you or whatever. Can we just prepare our guys, right? What would you say, like, I know you recruit the Southwest Missouri area a ton with you guys not being that far away and your roots here. And I know that as well because, like, when I go watch my players play, I see you like probably 30 times during the season.
I'm out a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like if you were to take a pulse, since you played in Southwest Missouri, and it's been a handful of years since you did that, and now you recruit Southwest Missouri, what's the temperature on Southwest Missouri basketball? Like, do you think we're trending up? Do you think we're doing things the right way? Like, what do you think about the teams in the area, the players you're seeing? Like, I guess just the overall, like I said, the pulse on it.
Yeah, no, I really like recruiting Southwest Missouri. I mean, I think that a lot of the kids are well coached, and
Right.
and you know, we've had some good success with the kids from Southwest Missouri as far as their academic background as well.
Right.
You know, a lot of great kids as far as their character goes as well. So as far as where they're at nationally, you know, I've seen basketball in a lot of different areas of the country,
Right.
specifically the Midwest, and I wouldn't say that the athleticism in Springfield,
Yeah,
the
it's
Springfield,
not.
Missouri area is not paramount.
Right.
There's a lot more high-level athletes in some of the other areas of the country. But as far as coaching and style of basketball and skill set, very,
Right.
very skilled, very well coached area of basketball. And so that makes it easier on us, you know, just because we always like to say you can't be an idiot and play at Northark, because we do so many different things. We multiple defenses, multiple offenses, and
Right.
we change on the fly.
Right. Which
we play so
requires
fast.
some savvy and some skill.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I love recruiting Southwest Missouri. A lot of our roster, you know, over half of our rosters is from the area.
Right.
And just because of our recruiting resources, we kind of have to recruit regionally. I mentioned earlier that, you know, we've had kids internationally, Serbia, Nigeria.
Right.
We've had kids, you know, from Ohio, all over the country. We have a kid from San Antonio right now. But for the most part, the majority of our roster is Southwest Missouri and Northwest Arkansas. That's the
Right.
majority of our roster. And so we kind of got lucky that both of those areas are, you know, like I mentioned before, pretty well coached and very, very skilled players. And even though we might not have the top tier athletes all the time, we are able to compete pretty well because of our recruiting base.
Right. I noticed that probably for the first time in my life whenever we moved out to Denver. You know what I mean? And there were definitely like some high-end elite athletes. Like there was, you know, we had a player that went to Boise State as like a 6'6" point guard. There was a local kid when I was out there that ended up at Indiana. You know what I mean? Like there's some pretty top-end athletes, kind of similar to Kansas City, St. Louis, Memphis, you know, Memphis especially these days.
Yeah.
But from what I noticed, and I'm curious if you think this has anything to do with it, youth basketball out there, like there was a lot of great intentions. I met some fantastic people, right? Like people that really have a good heart for it, and there is good going on. But I felt like top to bottom youth basketball, there wasn't the structure that there was here.
No, it's not very organized. I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, the organization of youth basketball, I mean, if you want to develop a good program as a high school coach, you got to start them early, and you got to get them organized early.
Of course.
And if you already have a community that does that, it makes your job a lot easier at the high school level. And so, yeah, what you see in a lot of areas of the country is that they don't have a very organized level of youth basketball, and so that ends up catching up with them eventually.
Right, and I saw out there, I did see good youth basketball business. There's a lot of facilities that have 4 or 5 courts, a lot of tournaments, a lot of club teams that pop up out of the woodwork here, there, and everywhere. But I feel like here, and there's still a ton of club teams everywhere, so like we still definitely have a ton down here because basketball is like such a part of the culture, you know? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But my thing is there's still more of like the high school coach has a little bit more to do with his feeder teams or her feeder teams. It feels like in our area. And like when I was out there, I didn't know high school or didn't notice as many high school coaches that were so involved with they were just like, you know, hand them off to the club coaches, you know what I mean? And less like camps or clinics or things that they were putting in. Like they don't actually out there play middle school versus middle school basketball anymore. Like the winter is all club season. Like they don't even have, like, you know, when I grew up, we would play 7th and 8th grade, you know, and I know some schools down to 6th grade, if you're small enough, you would hop on a bus and play the other teams in the conference.
Right.
And like we didn't have that.
Yeah,
out
10
in
to 15
Colorado.
game schedule. Yeah.
Exactly. And out in Colorado, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
They had intramurals like in the school, but it was like a thing where the top, quote unquote, top players like didn't play intramurals. Like they just played club ball. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it's definitely a difference that I saw. You know what I mean? And so I was curious your take on that. I feel like I've always, you know, and being from here has a part. You know, we're going to be biased
a little bit, yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah, we try not to be,
but I really do feel like, you know, we can always get what we're looking for, and if you're looking for negative, you can find it everywhere. But if you're looking for positive, like there's an awful lot of positive things about Southwest Missouri basketball. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I think coaching is definitely part of that. Like, you know, there's been a lot of high school and youth programs in the area that have even brought me in, and it's like just the attitude to like bring in player development coaches to, you know, get a different voice in the gym or you know, get a shot in the arm and like try some different things. Like just the fact that there's a commitment to that is, I think, a positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, just hearing a different voice or getting a different perspective. I mean,
right.
just last year I called a local high school coach.
Right.
I won't mention a name, but I was having some difficulty with some defensive concepts, and he was well known as a defensive head coach in the area.
Right.
And so I called him up on the phone and I said, you know, how do you teach these concepts?
Right.
You know, you've had some success with your clubs from a defensive standpoint, and so, you know, just taking a step back and understanding that it's, you know, as a collective unit of coaches, we can get more accomplished.
Right.
It's not necessarily a pride thing of I know more than you every time. You sometimes you gotta get somebody else that maybe has a different perspective or teaches something in a different way. And a lot of times what we hear is, yeah, I was teaching that exact same thing, and it's so nice just to hear another coach teach it to
like
that same player,
right.
So they understand that, hey, you know, it's not just me that's trying to get you to do this. You know, a lot of other coaches believe this as well. So that's definitely something that's we haven't shied away from. I mean, obviously we have I think very highly of my dad and his knowledge, you know, for our program. But at the same time, he lets other coaches in the gym all the time, you know, and we don't mind guys like you training our players.
About that, you know what I mean? Like I think that's important. Like even, you know, not only just like the fact that, you know, we expect our players to be actively seeking growth or like being open to change or open to new ideas, but, you know, so obviously we should do the same in some way or fashion, right? But, you know, just like not having the insecurity to worry about, you know, or to be fearful of, oh man, I was wrong, or man, I could have been better. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think back and luckily I hopefully still have a long way to go here, you know, if I stay healthy, we'll say, you know, so I'm pretty young in this, but I started, the nice thing about me failing as a college player is I started coaching center. Right. In my first few years, I did everything wrong. Like I thought it was all X's and O's, you know, and I think I had like a natural propensity for like relationships and stuff because I was younger and close to those guys' age already, but I wasn't as focused on it. Like I was more focused on teaching you what I know. And then like when it came to game day, beating the coaches on the other side and proving that I know more than they do and that it's game day. Like I still had that fire as a player, which I think we all do to a degree. But it kind of took me being wrong a few times and getting kind of punched in the mouth. And I had to take a step back and be like, crap, like, I don't know everything. I think, you know, guys like your dad or, you know, I was talking to Coach Jim Boone the other day and like a lot of people follow him, like, you know, Coach White down in Northwest Arkansas, speaking of that area, you know, there's just a ton of great examples of coaches who are literally always students of the game, right? And it took me some time to figure that out for myself. But I think that was like in my young journey, like for the young coaches that I'm friends with or interacting with, that's always like one of the first things I give them too. And I'm like, hey, I don't know why you're asking me because I have no idea. Like I'm still a mess, like figuring this out as I go. But B, like the first thing you can do, I think, is opening up those doors, figuring out, you know, what it is you could be better at, being self-aware, right? And I think that was just as you were talking about, you know, your dad being willing to have other, like your dad's a in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right? Like he won, 500 something games at the high school level before going to college, and yet he's still willing to hear others out and maybe see about, getting a different perspective or a different way of doing things, which I think is valuable.
There's a system, there's a method behind his madness, but also we're constantly tweaking.
Which is healthy.
That's important.
That's
it
healthy.
is. And I think that I was just mentioning this to some of the players the other day. I think that failing is sometimes more important than succeeding. A lot of times when you succeed, you're not sure why you succeeded.
Of course.
But failure is something that's, you're going to have to take a look at yourself or what your actions were, because that's a terrible feeling for anybody whenever they fail at something. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to fail. You don't want to see other people, watch you fail or struggle. And so those moments, I think you grow from those moments a lot more than the successes. And we always say, you got to look bad before you can look good.
Right. And I think just all too often we almost shame things like changing your mind or failing, you know what I mean? And, like you said, all too often, that's where you actually grow, right? That's where we actually figure out the thing that we needed to lead to this thing. And then that's where, oh, holy crap.
Yeah.
A light bulb.
Why do we change?
Right?
Because
exactly.
something went wrong.
Exactly. Right. Otherwise, we would just be the same the whole way through.
Yeah.
Looking at your guys, and I kind of want to switch gears here before I let you go. I don't want to take up all your time. I know you guys just got married last weekend, and your wife.
Yeah, my time is no longer
probably wanting you to be around a little bit more this weekend, before the season gets hot.
Yeah.
But looking at this season, you guys are starting official practice next week. Right.
Correct.
What is your set of priorities before the first game? How long do you have before your first game? I haven't looked at the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I have looked at the schedule. It's not memorized.
Yeah.
It's a better way of putting it. But what are your priorities before that game? I guess is my question.
Yeah. So, the guys come in. A lot of them come in, before the first day of classes. We started school August 19th.
Right.
And so we basically have around 6 weeks before our first official practice, which starts on October 1st every year.
Right.
First official game, usually sometime around November 1st. So, we
so
have
roughly
basically a month of official practices and 6 weeks of what we call preseason training.
But that's just 8 hours a week during those 6
Right.
weeks, right?
We're kind of limited on the amount of time and what we can do. Not a lot of 5-on-5 stuff. There are some rules. A lot of people think there's no rules in junior college. There are some rules. We kind of have to follow some guidelines. We kind of have to follow. But we're going Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday most weeks of. We do a lot of skill development. We do a lot of strength and conditioning. We mentioned we had to get them in shape. Just a lot of stuff that we think maybe will be beneficial once we finally get to that first day of official practice. Introducing drills, parts of the whole, with team concepts, and really just trying to develop some team chemistry. This sounds funny, but just yesterday we went and we took our guys bowling.
Right.
Just
that makes total sense to me, though. Yeah.
We got to get these guys to get to know each other and to trust each other and to see each other for something maybe other than just a basketball teammate. And building that team concept outside of basketball is important. A lot of these kids, it's their first time away from home and they're scared. And so just getting them acclimated to the college lifestyle, that's very, very important, because when season hits, they don't have a lot of free time. No. They've got to figure it out in a hurry. When do I need to be, somewhere? Where do I need to be?
Kind of getting used to that routine of
and it's
time management.
Some of them figure it out in a hurry, and some of them they don't figure it out the whole first year. So and that reflects on their report card and their playing time a lot of times.
Of course.
But that's kind of what we do the first 6 weeks, and then with October months are a lot of fun, just because not only is it official practice, but we're allowed 4 dates for scrimmages. So we go to a couple of JUCO jamborees where we get to play three games against other junior colleges. We do a couple of those ones at University of Central Missouri. One of them's at Coffeyville Community College. Right. And then this year we're actually hosting a couple of scrimmages at our place. But we've traveled all over the place for those scrimmages. But those are good tests, and those are eye openers for the level of play for a lot of our guys as well, leading up to that first game. game. I did mention we had a veteran squad this year, and we're pretty excited about them. But early on, we have some significant tests, but we also have some winnable games. I think that this team this year has the expectation is to win 20 or more games out of our 30 on our regular season schedule every year. That's the expectation.
Right.
And we've averaged over 20 wins a season in the last 5 years. But just kind of getting guys ready for day one is maybe one of my favorite parts of what we do during the August, September, and October months.
Right. So just like the preseason portion, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. The preseason from the first day of class is actually
where they're seeing those like parts of the whole. And
the building up to where we need to get.
That could make or break you in theory, right? Like you making the most of those 8 hours a week, and then kind of going from there.
Well, and we mentioned the strength and conditioning. I mean, a lot of it is injury prevention. We're trying to get guys' muscles, ready to go, where maybe they're not as injury prone. Most of the athletic injuries happen in the first couple months of the season.
Right.
And so the better shape that we can get them in before they're actually physically tested at full speed in a game situation, I think the better.
Right. So you mentioned scheduling early on. You talked about recruiting, scheduling, then X's and O's.
Right.
On your schedule, who would you say, and it may be more than one team, I don't know, but who would you say is the most difficult to prepare for as you look at the schedule? And I know coach-isms, we're talking to our players, it's always the next game.
Yeah.
Right. I'm well aware of that, but also
everybody's got a game here.
We have to be like big picture as coaches too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do when you look down a schedule as a college coach? Is that's a win, that's a loss, that could go either way. That's kind of how you look at your schedule.
Yeah.
And so some of the teams that are a little bit more difficult to game plan for. Specifically, there's a team in our league, in our conference, that plays extremely slow, very ball control, defense heavy. They basically shoot it and then go get their rebound.
So you guys are like polar opposites.
Oh yeah, it's a completely they win ugly. We like to say that our style of play is a lot more pretty.
Right.
But at the same time, we struggle with teams like that because there's such a clash in styles of play, and whoever wins the tempo battle in games like that, that's who usually wins the game.
Right.
And so those are tough to game plan for because they do a pretty good job at playing their style, and we do a pretty good job of playing at our style. So
what are you emphasizing when you prepare for that? What are your keys to winning that battle of pace, I guess?
Oh, definitely. So I guess staying engaged on the defensive end. When a team is going to hold the ball, we have a 30-second shot clock. When a team is going to hold the ball for 20 or 25 seconds before they put up a shot, just staying engaged defensively for that amount of time is not something that most teams are used to at the junior college level. I mean, we shoot it in the first 10 to 15 seconds of the shot clock pretty much every trip down.
Right.
Because if we can't score in transition with a primary or secondary offense, we're going to run a quick hitter and try to get a shot up in a hurry.
Right.
That's just our style of play. And so when you play a team that's not interested in that, just that the week before that game, you kind of try to incorporate some moments in practice where your guys are having to defend for 30 seconds at a time.
No, and that's assuming the other team gets their way. Like, do you guys try to speed them up defensively?
The preference would be that they don't get to play that.
Make them play too fast.
We press, we play fast on offense.
Exactly.
We try to force them to play a little quicker than they're used to playing, and hopefully that pays dividends with turnovers and us getting better shots. But sometimes they win the battle of tempo, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to lose the game if we can do those little things, like I said, by staying engaged defensively, making sure that we're animals on the offensive and defensive glass, because those teams that like to win ugly, like the team that I'm referring to, a lot of the reason why they win is just they win the defensive battle, and they also win the rebounding battle, and so those are some things that you focus on when you go into games like that. Is what do they do well, and how can we guard against what they do well?
That makes sense to me. How much? So like with you guys having to do so much development at the junior college level, which I guess that's every level, but we mentioned earlier the nuances and the uniqueness of being a JUCO program. How much of your in-season preparation for game preparation, how much of it is scouting the other team versus being good at what we're good at, or being great at what we're good at? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's
focusing on ourselves instead of focusing on others.
That's an excellent question. I wish more people would ask that question.
Right.
I think that you're a fool if you don't prepare somewhat for your opponent, but you really
Right.
have to really focus on yourselves first and foremost.
Right.
What are we good at? And you don't want to change who you are for a specific game. I think that's when you get into trouble as a coach or as a team, is when you're trying to be somebody that you're not, trying to be a team that you're not, trying to play a different style than what you're used to. You don't want to change too much about who and what you are. But at the same time, there are some significant challenges with different teams. For instance, when we play, most people don't know this. There's 3 levels of junior college basketball. There's Division
Right.
1, Division 2, and Division 3, and we play a significant number of Division 1 junior colleges. And so when
Right.
we play those Division 1s, a lot of times they're bigger, they're more athletic, they're stronger, they're more skilled, and so there are some ways that maybe we can tweak what we do to kind of take away some of those challenges physically.
Right.
That we might have to come up against with those Division 1 junior colleges. And so that might be a way that we might tweak a little bit, kind of change a little bit who and what we are for a specific game. We'd like to play man-to-man against everybody, but there are some games where we're going
Just
to play
simply
some
can't.
zone just from a matchup standpoint.
Right.
We played Scottie Pippen's nephews, Kavion Pippen, 6'10", 260, and we don't have anybody that can guard him one-on-one in the
match up
post.
with that,
So we played a lot of a zone that game just so we could kind of keep him away from the rim.
Of course, right, and kind of dictate where he catches.
Exactly.
And are we 3/4 full in this spot? And so we got a guy on the backside because we're in a zone. You know exactly who should be there.
And when you're in a full front, from a post standpoint, you've got backside issues, and so that really handcuffs your ability to defend on the perimeter as well.
Exactly.
And so the preference would be not to be in a full front or even a full 3/4
you
front.
guys try to avoid that as best.
Yeah,
just force
if
them
we
to
can.
catch it in a spot where you can dig and kind of make them play uncomfortable from a certain area of the floor.
Exactly.
Is that more
Push them off the block. Don't let them
Right.
catch it too deep. But at the same time, if you're going to let them catch it over the top and you don't have any backside help, that's an easy layup. Or if you have backside help, it's a pretty easy skip for an open 3 on the weak side. So,
Right. And so
those are some things you have to think
out.
about. What are we willing to give up? Because you can't. You really can't defend everything.
No, you can't. Yeah, and I think that kind of sums it up defensively too. Deciding what we're definitely not going to. I think it's good to know your yeses and your nos. Yes, we need these 3 things.
Yeah.
No, we will absolutely not deal with these 3 things.
Well,
right?
just simplify our defensive
arbitrary
philosophy.
number. Right.
You really don't want to give up layups or open
Right.
threes. That's what people are best at in today's game. Layups and open threes. Rim finishes and open threes. That's what people work on. That's what people are trying to get.
Highest
and
points
so if
per
we can get
possession.
guys to take
Right.
contested, 12 to 18-foot jumpers, that's
the
really
idea.
the goal of our defense. Outside of getting
Do you
a
guys
steal.
do you do anything specific like drop coverage versus ball screens or anything like that kind of forces those things?
I hope nobody that we play is watching this or
Right.
is going to listen to this. But
they're going to have film anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's the great thing about college basketball is pretty much everybody shares film across the board now.
Right.
So there's really not a lot of secrets.
Yeah.
It's a battle of wills,
Right.
when you get there because everybody kind of knows what you're going to do.
Exactly. Right.
But yeah, just to that point, we like to some people call it blitz, some people call it trap or double. We like to do that with our bigs. We like to go ahead and trap those ball screens and see if we can get a steal and really put the offense on the defensive as they come off the ball screen.
Right.
What does the guard want to do? He wants to turn the corner and turn it up, or he wants to get a shot off as he turns the corner. Or he wants to have a pocket pass. Well, if we can take that pocket pass away or take that shot away or force him off the arc as he comes off that big on small ball screen, that's kind of where we've had a lot of success in our ball screen coverage in recent years.
That makes sense to me though.
Yeah.
So
With our guard on guard ball screens, you don't see a lot of guard on guard ball screens. We pretty much let our guards switch almost everything. Down screens, flare screens, ball screens. Our guards
really
are all going to be between 6'2" and 6'5" for the most part. So
That's fair.
we don't get into a lot of issues with having them allowing them to switch.
You're seeing that, and part of it, like you mentioned, is your roster kind of dictates what you do. But at the same time, you're seeing trickle down effects at all times. I think a lot of why I study NBA more, I study college basketball, I watch film, I have synergy so I can dive in and do those things. But I think part of why I study the NBA the most isn't, I'm not really digging for James Harden's elite step back, repertoire or whatever. I don't coach many James Hardens. And I'm not trying to make any. I think what I like the most is the trickle down where you see successful NBA teams and then you almost always see pieces of what they do, coaches take that stuff at the next level, right? And so you watch March Madness and you see like, oh yeah, the Warriors did that a lot the last couple of years. And switching is like one of those things where a lot of teams in the NBA want to switch anymore, right? And so now it's like up to coaches to figure out how to combat that. But it's always delayed at the college level. It trickles down. It's a little bit slower. And so if you're able to switch, teams aren't really necessarily like, do you guys see a lot of switching whenever you're playing against other teams?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of teams, I mean,
do you think that thesis is correct?
I'm not sure that there's a right or a wrong answer. I mean, a lot of it's based on personnel.
That's fair.
You know, I can't switch with I've got a 6'10" kid that's 220.
Yeah, he's not.
I can't switch with him on the perimeter.
Right. But if you can switch 1 through 4, that's not awful.
No. I mean, if you can switch, I mean, it's the Steph Curry effect. I mean, he's eliminated a lot of centers from the game that can't switch on the perimeter because what happened every trip down the floor, he would try to get somebody into a ball screen situation where they had to switch, otherwise he would light them up. And so that whole concept right there is the reason why a lot of NBA teams want to switch almost every ball screen or ice them, you know, where they're not even allowed to get to the ball screen.
Well, and you mentioned the points per possession. Well, I mentioned points per possession, but you were talking about the 3-pointers and layups being like the goal. Right. And like usually that kind of negates it, at least to a degree. Like we're running you off the 3-point line. Right. We're loaded up to contest your layup. Like you got to shoot somewhere in between off the dribble. Right. With a hand.
That would be the preference for most defenses, I think.
Of course, yeah.
And there are some exceptions.
How you get to that.
There's some guys that can really, you know, can hurt you from the mid-range. But a longer two, we'll take our chances.
We can live with that, right? Yeah. And I think that's fair. Like that's a whole other conversation, like analytics versus tradition. I'm a big believer in like what you said, like know your roster, know who you are, take what works and be great at that. Without like taking too much more of your time, if we had to leave the parents, players, whoever it is I serve or whoever it is that's taking the time to watch or listen to this, if you like had to leave them with any advice, be it, and I'm thinking youth and high school players and parents, so a very specific demographic, what would you as a college coach, as a college assistant say to that demographic, like advice, you know, for those who, and not everybody wants to play college basketball, but for those who aspire to, what would your advice be? And I think we've touched on it for sure throughout this whole conversation, but like if you had to sum it up, bullet points. Yeah.
So for advice for the high school basketball player that wants to play college basketball, a lot of people think that all it has to do with is what they can do on the basketball floor, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
You know what type of teammate that they are, what type of student that they are, you know what they can afford financially is so important when it comes to college basketball, and you'd hope that it would be just about the basketball side of things, but that's just simply not the truth. And so understanding that there are multiple levels of college basketball and multiple options within the scope of college basketball, I think would be important. Most high school players have never seen anything other than a Division I basketball game. They've never seen a Division II basketball game, a Division III basketball game, a junior college basketball game, an NAIA basketball game. There are some players that can really play at all of those levels. Oh, yeah. And those are options from a financial standpoint, from an academic standpoint, from a skill set standpoint for a lot of players. And so I guess what I would say to all of these players that are aspiring to play is to do your homework. Not only do you need to do the work in the classroom and on the floor and you know, get your high school coach on your good side. That way he puts in a good word, of course, for you with guys like me. But and you know, there's always somebody watching. Right. You know, you mentioned that I'm in a lot of gyms. If I see somebody that's not playing hard on one end of the floor, or is a bad teammate, or is uncoachable, or even after the game, walking through the hallways, what they're doing, those things are very important when I'm investing a lot of time and money and effort into a person over a year or 2 years with me. Those things are very important because I want my working relationship day in and day out to be a positive thing, and so bringing the right people in is extremely important. So just know that somebody's always watching. Do the right thing on and off the floor, and really just do your homework on the different levels of college basketball and what your options are. So that would be, I guess, a long-winded piece of advice for parents and players of, you know, that are looking to be, you know, involved in college basketball.
And like I said, like I've been picking your brain for a little bit now. So I don't want it to get drowned out. Like, I think summing it up definitely helps. You know, it sounds like be aware, right? Be accountable, and then doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh yeah,
and then it'll take care of itself.
I would love for, you know, I always say, you know, I think fast, I talk fast, and I talk too much. People always ask me why I repeat myself, and it's because I have to repeat myself with some of these
hopefully
kids.
it sinks in.
But having you paraphrase a lot of what I've said is definitely helpful, and I hope that it helps you in your message, and it helps somebody out there,
right.
With their thought processes as they move through, you know, this you know, junior, senior year of high school. Was, you know, they have this yearning to play college basketball and to prove what they can do at the next level. There's a lot that goes into it.
Right. Coach, I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.